Town of Cedar Lake Plant Commission work session, July 5th, 2023, to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carnahan?
Here.
Mr. Foreman is absent. Mr. Hunley?
Here.
Ms. Betzhauer? Present. Mr. Sharp is absent. Mr. Parker?
Here.
Mr. Capura?
Present.
Mr. Scalatas?
Present.
Mr. Oliphant?
Here.
Mr. Austin?
Present.
Ms. Abernathy? Present. Ms. Hyduk is present.
Okay. First order of business, work session number 1, Lakeside South Concept Plan. Owner Cedar Lake 133 LC, 8900 Wicker Avenue, St. John, Indiana. Petitioner Schilling Development, 8900 Wicker Avenue, St. John. Vicinity of 5604 West 141st Avenue, Cedar Lake, Indiana. Petitioner presenting a concept plan for Lakeside South and discuss rezoning the property to a PUD. Hi, Jack.
Good evening, Jack Sawyer with Schilling Development, representing Cedar Lake 133, the developers of the Lakeside subdivision. Since our last meeting, we were here last month at the study session, and since our last meeting, we went back to the drawing board, literally, and we met with our land planners, our engineers, and our builders, and came up with a few new ideas based on some of the input that we got from you guys last month. It looks very similar, but we now have 3 distinct products. We have the what we'll call traditional single-family lots, which is all on the east side of the project. We have now maintenance-free single-family in the northwest quadrant, which is a combination of 60 and 70-foot lots. And then we have the paired villas in the southwest quadrant. Still with the total of 550 units, which we feel is the minimum that we can have on this parcel to make it financially feasible. So the 550 units, again, is spread over 220 acres at 2.5 units per acre, 2.5. Some of the changes from last time, so if you recall last time we had 60 and 70-foot sections of the development. Now we've intermingled those to where the 60s and 70s are alternating. There's no 2 of the same lot next to each other, so we have maybe 2 60s and then a 70, or 2 70s and then a 60. And what that does is it allows for more variety of product. Each of those size lots fits a different type of product, and so previously each of the sections, the 60-foot lots had 5 different products, the 70-foot lots had 5 different products. Now we have 10 different products intermingled throughout the development, and that would be in addition to having the options for things like front porches, 3-car garages. So you'll get a lot more variety. We also added another row of single-family lots where it used to be the smaller lots, and what that does is it creates no dissimilar products back-to-back. So all of the back-to-back products are the same. I want to talk a little bit about demographics for this project, and talking about who you've heard of such a thing as like an age-restricted community. This is not age-restricted, but it is age-targeted, at least in terms of the western half of the project. And we had, I'm quoting some article recently from ARP that talks about housing a changing America, and talks about adults living alone account for nearly 30% of U.S. households, nuclear families account for 20% of today's household, nuclear families being 2 parents and kids. The largest demographic at 28% is single adults who live alone, and almost, as of the mid-2010s, almost half of America's households were either adults living alone or adults sharing a home with other adults. Talks about the different breakdown of demographics, and one of the interesting items on here is in the 2018 Our Home and Community Preferences Survey, 77% of people age 50 or older said they wanted to stay in their current community for as long as possible. And that doesn't always mean staying in their house if they have a 2-story and they outgrow it or whatever. So we're talking about age targeted here, and either singles or empty nesters for that product. One of the highlights of this project that we've talked about from the start is the east-west path system. Previously, it kind of went through the middle of the development. We've now moved it along 141st. So now our 10-foot paved path would take the place of the 5-foot concrete sidewalk that would have been constructed along the north side of 141st. One of the problems that we have with the frontage on 141st is that there's 2 parcels that are excluded that we do not own. One is the old farmstead, farmhouse and outbuildings, and another single-family residence that sits along 141st. So we would have a problem with getting the sidewalk through those parcels. They don't have the proper right-of-way at that point, and they're also not annexed into the city, so they're outside the city limits. So now our path goes around those, through the park, through the wooded area, and we still have that east-west connection, and it would allow that path to later be extended in both east and west directions, and potentially to new development to the south. One of the things that you had asked for last time was kind of a build-out schedule, and I don't know, did they get that? Okay, so,
It's in their packet.
so we put together, I worked with my IT department, we put together a spreadsheet that would approximate a build-out schedule, and we were able to draw on some experience with a very similar type of development, having the 3 components of single-family, what we'll call cottage home lots, and paired villas. We had the Greystone development in St. John that had a mix of these products. We also had the Beacon Point project in Cedar Lake that had a mix of these projects. So we were able to look at the sales pace when you have the 3 different products in one development, and we were able to kind of extrapolate how that would build out. And we think this is probably best case scenario for us. This is assuming there's no recession coming or anything's going to slow down. But this builds out the schedule, and obviously the development starts slow at the beginning, and then when you're in the middle of it, it's going pretty well, and then it kind of slows down at the end. And this predicts up to 80 closings a year, which is pretty aggressive. In any of our other developments, we've never had more than 65, so we're assuming that things will be going well here. Potentially, if we start developing in 2024, they start building in 2024, you don't see your first occupancy until 2025, and then projecting all the way through. And again, if the economy holds and everything continues well, we see final occupancy on this in 2033. So best case scenario, a 10-year build out, more than likely even more than that. And then I also highlighted at the bottom where we hit cumulative occupancy of 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. So that's about 2 years at a time building that out. We have begun the process of a traffic impact study that will take about 8 weeks. Per Don's request, this will involve nearly every road and intersection around this project, all of the major roads near this project, and all of the major intersections around this project, including some that are not in the town limits. The process involves counting existing traffic, turning movements at the various intersections, and then projecting where the future traffic will go. Typically, when you do something like that, about halfway through the project, you would do a follow-up traffic impact to see if your assumptions were correct. So they're going to predict where all this traffic is going, and then, say, 5 years down the road, you look at it again and see if your assumptions were correct and if you have to make any adjustments. We talked to the town, we had a staff meeting last week, and we learned that you guys are in the process of maybe looking at a new thoroughfare study or a thoroughfare plan. So that may be coming in a couple years here, and that would also do some of these same things, look at traffic flow patterns. A few interesting details have emerged once we had discussions with our traffic engineer. Number one, the demographic for the maintenance-free products, again, tends to be singles, young and old, and empty nesters, which generate less traffic than the traditional single-family homes. The fact that this project falls within the Crown Point school system will tend to pull more traffic to the east as residents migrate back towards their sports and friend groups. So, and that might be a push of maybe 5% as people look to travel back towards Crown Point High School, things like that. And we do have the latest available traffic counts for the roads around here. Right now, none of them are anywhere near capacity, but obviously they'll, I don't know how old those are. They'll do actual counts on all the roads, so we'll know what they actually are. And then lastly, one of the most exciting things to come out of our discussions with the staff is the possibility of creating a residential TIF. This is something that's relatively new. As of July 1st of this year, residential TIFs are now viable for a project like this. This project has a potential to generate about $30 million in revenue, and we're going to refine those numbers closer to see what the actual TIF revenue would be over the life of the project. But that $30 million can be used for public infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, bridges, even be used for police and fire, and a lot of that would be at the town's discretion. So those would be that would be a great funding source that could be used over the life of this project. So our intention moving forward is to start the public hearing process, which would be at the August 16th Plan Commission meeting. We file by the end of this week. Currently, the majority of the property is zoned A1. The small portion on the west that we purchased from the Lattins was already zoned R1. We're finishing up the annexation of the small strip that's in between, so that'll be done shortly. And then we plan to advertise for public hearing for the August 16th Plan Commission meeting. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to work through the PUD ordinance with the staff. There's a lot involved in that, but so that's it in a nutshell. I know that's a lot, but I'm able to answer any questions that you have about the products, the development, or anything else that you want to talk about.
I would like to apologize, Jack, for not being here last month, but I had a granddaughter in California graduate, so I was there.
No problem.
And so I wasn't able to make any comments then. I see you've gone from 593 down to 550. That's good. The only thing I don't like the 60-foot lots.
Understood.
Because my residents have been on my back heavy about that.
Yeah, understood. And that was the feedback that we got last time. When we started Beacon Point, the cottage home lots there were 56 feet. Later, we've gone to 60, and now we're going to a mix of 60s and 70s. The majority of the units that are built in there have a 40-foot wide footprint. So all of these lots all have a minimum 8-foot side yard, but you're going to see much more than that, 8, 10, 12-foot side yards. We feel that the 60-foot lot is important to have a variation of product in here. Again, the maintenance-free is kind of the key to the whole section, having maintenance-free units where they have an HOA that takes care of the lawn and snow. So we feel like we've done our best to mitigate having all 60-foot lots, having everything look exactly the same. I meant to mention, in addition to the 10 different product types that they have in there, they've now opened up to the entire color palette of siding that's available, which is 30-some colors. So you've got 10 products, 30 colors. You've got options for front porches, 3-car garages. It's going to seem very nice. So.
My only concern is the 191, 60-foot, I like the length of 135 feet.
Yeah, they're deeper than normal. And I can tell you.
Jack, how many of those are 60 and how many are 70?
Yeah, there you go. I was just looking for that number. They have 105 60s and 86 70s for a total of 191. And no two next to each other are the same. No more than two.
What's the number of units that are gonna be in there now?
550
550?
total throughout.
For the sheet, we just got said 60. This sheet.
That's something from Chris can.
I'm just saying, they handed me a sheet with 650 on it.
Sorry, I can explain that what Jack said.
All right.
All right, now, I agree with Bob on the 60-foot lots. We're trying to expand, get wider lots. We're not trying to get down to smaller lots. And we're fighting 50-foot wide lots that are existing now are smaller. So I definitely don't like the 60-foot lots. And where is the park at in there?
So we have this whole entrance section that's showing as 4.7 acres. You have that as actual park land
I see
with the
that.
playground right in the center here. And then we have open space to the west. But the trail, so as we've done in the past couple projects, we do a combination of land and improvements. So we have obviously the land, we will have a playground there, and then we will have the path is what we call a linear park. And the hopes are to be able to connect that into the Founder's Creek Trail.
And then the path's gonna be in lieu of putting a sidewalk along
Correct.
141st?
Correct.
But the path's gonna be back in off the street, so if somebody wants to walk down that street, they gotta go on the path?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it winds around. There's places where it comes up along the street, but there's other places where it tucks back through the woods. We've done this, if you've ever been up by the preserve in St. John along White Oak, we have a path that follows along White Oak, kind of meanders in and out. We're able to landscape it heavily, creates a nice buffer along the edge of the road.
I don't have too much of a problem with that due to the fact that we've got two properties there that aren't even in our town. And trying to put a sidewalk would be taking it down and then jogging it back and then jogging it and jogging it back and...
Yeah, there's probably not even enough room. It would stop and start,
Yeah,
so.
as long as they have access, as long as they can get through there and walk down through there in substitute of a sidewalk.
We find the 10-foot path gets used a lot more than a 5-foot concrete walk, quite honestly, by everybody.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the future road connections, what road are they going to connect to when we're at on that road?
So, yeah, you're talking about the two arrows pointing east?
Yeah.
So that would be, I believe it's known as Cedar Lake Road. It's only about 600 feet east. Yeah, Cedar Lake Road. It runs right off the edge of the paper here, which comes back out to 133rd.
Now that bottom one, would that be by Lemon Lake?
No, Lemon Lake is up north here, actually north of the current lakeside development, which is basically right in here, and then you've got Lemon Lake to the north. So this would bring you out east. It would bring you out to that 5-way intersection where you've got the little used car lot at
Okay.
133rd and Cedar Lake Road.
So it's directly south of Lemon Lake, Park, they have their first 200 units that we've already approved, and now this will be directly south of that in Robin Smith.
I'm trying to figure out where Rita Road would be on that.
I believe this is Reeder Road right here, this little angle piece that you're seeing heading south, off the bottom of the page.
It is.
Right, yeah, right by the farmstead, it's there. Chris, do you want to expand a little bit more on the TIF? I know you've done more research on it. The town basically brought us the idea and said this might make sense. We have obviously a huge off-site sewer cost to bring sewer to this property. The town's already invested the money in the water line, but we still have to run the 12-inch water line through the property. So we have some major infrastructure expenses, as well as any future road improvements that are identified in the traffic impact study. We don't know what that's going to come back, but we think that there will be some road improvements warranted at some point, maybe halfway through the project or towards the end of the project.
So John, the handout that you've received, the reason, so what's on the top left, and the reason you see 650 is I'm including approximately 100 homes in Lakeside Original that hasn't been developed yet into my TIF calculations. And it's, as you can see, I put the disclaimer at the top, for representational purposes only. I'm not a CPA. I only pretend to be one, and I stayed at Holiday Inn Express, so I think I'm qualified.
I like it.
But, so the housing TIF we would create would encapsulate this proposed project and the existing project, what's not built out. It's probably more like 690 homes, but I'm rounding down for conservative purposes. You can see the numbers there. The tax rates are what the tax rates are for that area. And then the bottom line would be just above the yellow on the bottom left, the 50% above estimate. So Jack, I believe that it possibly brought up in a previous meeting that the assessed value that would be created out of this project alone would be approximately $220 million. I've got it set at about 200, just because, again, I want to be a little conservative with my estimates and not try to over-guess on what we could potentially bring in before the CPAs start running their numbers. But, yeah, somewhere between $30 and probably $50 million is what the TIF could potentially bring in over 20 years. Again, build out, no recessions, perfect world, everything staying the same for 20 years would be that pro forma. So that's why I discounted that by 50%, which is how you get $54 million. And I based this off of another housing TIF that I did in St. John as the town manager there. That one was age restricted, so you can see on the right side of the top paper, that is the age restricted housing pro forma breakdown, and that was done by Baker Tilly. My own numbers came in within $800,000 of their projection, so I'm pretty close for not being a CPA, but I just wanted to give a reference point as to how much revenue can be generated to solve infrastructure problems throughout the community, more specifically inner servicing this community in this project. What I've heard sitting and listening to the Plan Commission meeting specifically in this area was that 141st needs to be upsized to 3 lanes. I believe this would pay for it. And I also would think that with the remaining monies, 133rd can be finished and built out 3 lanes if desired. Potentially also intersection improvements along the pointed areas that the traffic impact study will show. Jack is right, the town is looking to undergo a road impact fee, which would have to have a thoroughfare plan created as part of that road impact fee. That will be an initiative that's undertaken likely in 2024. And you can see at the bottom of this paper here, I also estimated what the total revenues from a possible road impact fee would be from a project of this size. That one is using 550 units, just the units from this proposed concept plan, not the additional units that are already approved from the original Lakeside. I just wanted to give the Plan Commission an idea of what revenues are going to be generated specifically as we're looking towards the housing TIF, because that is more flexible than any of your impact fees or system development charges, and can be used to build out a lot more infrastructure for the community than any of our other traditional fees. And it is right that the state legislature just authorized housing TIFs this year to take effect July 1st of this year, and it sunsets in 4 years. So there's a 4-year window for municipalities to take advantage of the housing TIFs that the state legislature has authorized us to use.
And that's fantastic, because the state has always tried to take stuff away from us. This is the first time they've ever given us any tools to work with.
They've also expanded the use of TIF, or the allowed use of the revenues, to include police and fire, capital, and operating expenses. So, to conclude, Greg, you've been on the redevelopment commission. It has been expanded since the time you last served on that board.
You know, Chris, and I appreciate all the work you did here, and the TIF, I mean, that certainly is an interesting tool. Well, another thing that's interesting to me is all the ifs that have to fall into place for all that to make sense and make it work. I think the biggest issue with any of this, and I know everybody likes to ring the cash register down here even before the money comes in. Everybody wants to look at the projected revenue that these types of things potentially bring in. But I think what also has to be taken into consideration is the feel of the residents, even the ones that have moved here from somewhere else, don't seem to appreciate the continued dense development. So, and the impacts of that, then, and I know the traffic study, that's important, but the impacts of that also need to be, we need to continue to look at the impacts of the traffic and know what that's going to be, and a myriad of other issues, schools, police, fires, things of that nature. And also, going forward, or other developers that are going to be coming in here wanting to get something approved, I think at some point we're going to have a real solid guideline of what we're going to expect and what we're not going to approve going forward. I mean, I've sat here and I've listened to everything. I mean, I don't plan my home finances on if this happens or if that doesn't happen or whatever. And I think the responsible thing to do is kind of plan for what's the probability of what is going to happen. I think we're already in a recession. Those are just my thoughts.
Absolutely, and we're just looking at, on our side, the tools to solve infrastructure problems throughout the community. This can be used, it's not for specifically mixed-use residential, it's just a plain residential TIF.
I think ultimately the risk is on us as the developer with the TIF. If the development doesn't come, then the TIF money doesn't come, then the improvements aren't needed. But if the development builds out as we expect it to build out, we're saying it's going to build out in 10 years, the TIF has a life of 20 years. So as long as we get this thing done in 20 years, it generates the revenue, and the revenue will come as the infrastructure needs are generated at the same time. So it's really a win-win.
Yep.
Well, Jack, what would this look like if it didn't have any 60-foot lots? What would the number of, did you guys look at that when you were?
I did not. I know we played around with those numbers last time, 60s to 70s. I mean, we really felt like we wanted some 60-foot lots just because of the maintenance-free concept. What happens is the yards get bigger, the maintenance fees go up, and the HOA dues to maintain those lots goes up, and then it's not a viable project. If they have, I don't know what the current HOA dues are, but if your HOA dues end up being $200 a month, that's on top of your mortgage. It's not reasonable for people to want to live in a maintenance-free environment and pay $200 a month or whatever that fee is, related to the amount of work that has to be done on mowing the grass, plowing snow, things like that. So,
Chris, can I interrupt you for a second? I got a question for you. Jack said earlier that the town made an investment in the water line. Do you know how that came about and what the cost was for that?
I was,
town's investment?
I believe he's referencing the East Side Transmission Main, which was an initiative that started before I was town manager, so I would have to defer to Dave as to when it officially started, but I believe it was a multi-year process through the SRF, state revolving loan fund, and going through the IURC. But I believe the cost is $1.3 million
1.3 million? And how'd that get paid for?
through a state revolving loan fund.
State, so the town borrowed the money for that?
Correct, from the state.
And the debt service is getting paid out of the rates for the water? Or,
It's my understanding.
Being paid for by the rates.
when he said that, it started bouncing around in my brain, and I wanted to have a good understanding of how that worked.
Well, that rate responsibility is a requirement of the IURC, which is part of our petition for improvement and rate increase. So they oversaw the whole engineering, cost estimating, and approval of that project.
So that just got the water to that site?
It did. You see where it ends on 141st Avenue, right here.
Right down here.
And they're gonna transmit it to their,
We have to get it through our site
Yeah.
entirely, oversized with a 12-inch main, get it through so that ultimately your new well near the lighthouse will be connected to your new water tower over by Lemon Lake. So we're the missing link in the middle right now.
crystal.
Well, there's probably a supply missing link still going down the road further, correct?
No.
The lighthouse well provides all the supply you need for your development,
Yes,
but what about any development to the south?
that I don't know. That I don't know.
That's a Neil question.
Yeah, well, I've fished around in that a little bit too, and it seems that there has to be another well to supply any further development after that, based on what I've seen so far.
I don't think that's accurate, Greg. That well was purchased with the intent that it was a regional or global well site and well facility. It wasn't just purchased for the product mass or lakeside.
It's adequate for Lakeside currently though, right?
It is.
But let's say there's another 15, 20 years from now, there's another 2,000 homes south of that, then what?
More wells to look for.
That's what I'm,
More wells, and I believe as part of that SRF or IURC rate case that was undertaken, there's supposed to be connection of the two systems, east and west, for the town that will increase the capacity of the water systems. I believe that's supposed to be undertaken sometime in 2028 or beyond.
We've been mandated to loop our system. That's what that's about. It's a looping mechanism,
well, I knew that had to happen,
and that's what Chris was talking about.
but the further supply is what is concerning to me getting down the road, you know, especially for the folks that are on. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about where this water supply comes from and how it affects people's wells, and I think that's, you know, I've heard Neil's explanation for that, but I think that is somehow kind of undeterminable as well. You know, a hydrologist will tell you you can get so many gallons out of this aquifer and so many gallons out of that aquifer, but we don't know really what aquifer is supplying other aquifers.
We don't, but we can't see the geological structure, hydraulics of all of that. We can't do it. The engineers and soil people have to. And they've told us that what we're doing is correct. The other thing that's really important about this is being taken in steps, not eating the whole elephant in one bite. Building a tank, we're extending lines, we're connecting to a well, we're extending a line, connecting to another well. So it's all happening in bite sizes that the municipal water utility can undertake it. Developers have to come along, and now they're going to be partners. And by the way, they need to be partners.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think, again, I don't know what happens 20, 30 years from now. It concerns me what happens 20, 30 years from now. I probably won't be here, but the long and the short of it is in my view, I've always thought we probably need to leave a little something, leave it better than we found it at least. but the metropolis thing doesn't sit well with the residents, and I think we all know that.
I won't say another word. I clapped last time.
What about bigger lots out of HOA, and if you have an HOA, how's that gonna be set up?
So we have it, we currently have an HOA in Lakeside, that manages the entrance and the common areas, ultimately the park. That HOA will be expanded, which is nice, because the larger it is, the more well-funded it is, the more things it can do. So we have a master HOA that takes care of all of Lakeside. We manage that, the master HOA. That includes even the single family, they pay an HOA dues for the landscaped entrance and the maintenance of the entrance and things like that. Each of these sections, each of the maintenance-free sections will have what's called a sub-HOA. So they'll have an individual HOA that will be responsible for handling the maintenance of those particular units. So we don't normally get involved with that. The builder sets that up. We make sure that it's funded and that it works properly, so. But the good news is, all, the original 200 and the 550 will all be part of one master HOA, so it'll be a well-funded organization.
They also cut the road right-of-way grass too, which
Right.
looks very nice.
Yeah. We water it, we mow it, pay for the lights.
Not all HOAs are people's dreams.
Well, I know, unfortunately, the residents don't always love paying the dues. We have them in, every one of our developments has an HOA, and that's the only way to properly maintain the entrances, make them look nice, maintain the common areas, and help enforce the covenants. So we have a strict set of covenants, not only of the type of construction that's part of the covenants, but also ongoing maintenance, managing things like architectural approval for fences or pools or anything like that. So having an HOA has a benefit to helping the residents maintain their roads. You won't see properties get run down because the HOA is there and it enforces the covenants.
So will you entertain something bigger than 60-foot lots?
I don't know, we have to go back and crunch the numbers. I mean, we had crunched the numbers before, and 550 was like our lowest. That's how we got down there. We started at 600 on this thing. When we got down to 550, we said it doesn't math out. We have these massive off-site expenses, the sewer coming from Moore Street, 12-inch water line that has to go through the site. You know, the TIF is an interesting concept that really has just come about in the last month. So we can look at that and see what the benefit of that is for us, and if that helps with the density. You know, I've heard the term a couple times tonight where they said, you know, we don't like high density, but keep in mind this is 2.5 units per acre. That is extremely low density overall. I had the sheet with me earlier that had all the density of different developments around town, but 2.5 is the equivalent of a single-family development.
2.5, but that includes the parkland,
Yep.
the
Sure.
retention ponds,
Yep.
the walkway and all of that. It
Yep.
does not include, you know, you're not giving me density on what actually is being built on. You're giving me density on the whole thing. And yes, you know, we don't want to see a large density into this. We're talking about the total town per
Yeah.
se, you know.
But that's how density is calculated, with all the open space taken into account. Every subdivision has a detention
Yeah,
pond.
I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah.
that it's misleading saying it's 2.5 per acre, because you're talking to all the lake people out here online and me included, and it's not, you know, you gotta tell me how much is being built on. Now, I want you to entertain the thing of bringing it, the 60 lots up to at least to 70. I don't wanna see 60-foot lots. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
And I'm one of 7.
I think John's right. I think the PUD thing probably isn't going away. Nobody's gonna bring anything in here that's gonna adhere to the subdivision control ordinance, but if we have a standard for the PUD going forward, it protects us going forward.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the PUD is a creative tool that gives you, and you can read the definition of the planned unit development in your ordinance. it speaks exactly of this. It's a mix of products that can work together. The alternative, I know Heather doesn't want me to pull this one out again, but that's the standard development that we're seeing. This is what other developers are doing. This is what a straight R2 or an R1 ordinance forces you to do. We're trying to do something more creative than that. It costs more for us to do a development that looks like this, with curved roads, with lakes, with landscaped entrances and berms and bike paths, walking trails. We want it to be someplace where people want to live.
Yeah, Jack, I don't disagree with that. And like I told you before, the products that you have over there now are nice products. Nobody complains about them. Everybody that lives there seems to like them. It's just, and I think I'm not the only one here, just the standard going forward, I think, is what is concerning to everybody. Because everybody that comes in here is not gonna be a shilling development.
Well, and I agree, and I think you can look at each case independently on its own merit and not, I don't think whatever we agree to on this site necessarily means that you will have to do it again on some other site, or that somebody is gonna insist that whatever we did, they have to do too. So, I think each one's independent.
Well, you don't think we're gonna get that?
Well, I think you will, but
I assure you that's.
you have the ability to say no anytime, so,
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do right now.
I know.
And the playground, Jack, what about when does the playground go in and when does the equipment go in? Has that been thought about?
Has not been thought about it. That would be a whole, once we figure out what the density is, the number of units when we get to that point, there'll be this huge park calculation that Don and I will go through. We'll talk about what the improvements to the parkland are, when the improvements come, and what the value of all that is, the path and the playground. I know there's been some disappointment, I would say, in the initial park, in the original lakeside. The land is there. It was dedicated with, I think, the first phase, the very first phase.
That's why I asked you that question.
Yeah, and the improvements, the playground equipment that's coming, was promised with phase 2, which is, we're just getting to now, 5 years later, because of the whole water sewer situation. So, now we are starting phase 2, I mentioned that to you last time, and we've actually ordered the playground equipment, just in the last 2 weeks. Of course, it's gonna take 6 months to get here, but, that's coming, and so it'll be installed early next year.
This project was started on the north end and worked towards the south, right?
The original one was started at the north end, coming south. This one will likely start at the south end and work its way north, and they'll end up meeting in the middle.
Okay, so then that park has to go in the first phase?
Yeah, the land will be there right away, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
And maybe
you'll have residents there who want to use it,
Yep.
and
That's good.
Yeah, so, I mean, likely it'll go in like year 2 or 3. You know, when you look at the build-out schedule, the first year is all construction anyway, so.
right. All right, any other questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
Jack, are we really ready to see you next month? I mean, we need to have a PUD agreement. We need to have Tilly understood and agreed some fashion, more than just the air that we're sharing right now. We have financing circumstances. Chris is working on those. 13 days ago, we learned about TIP residential for the first time. So now we're diving in the deep end of the pool without really getting a lot of preparation for it. We're still in 60 versus 70, so that drives development.
Yeah.
Drawings. We really have a puzzle here. This is a 1,000-piece puzzle. There's a lot to it, so that it's right. And I can tell you, unless it's complete, I probably will lay a record that it shouldn't be considered until it's there. We're catching the paper up on all of the PUDs to the development agreements and understandings, and they really need to be contemporaneous with the application and the documentation supporting them. So,
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why I asked the question,
Yeah.
are we really ready?
I agree, we've got a long way to go yet, but there's also a multi-stage process that I'm sure you guys are all aware of, but we have to get through the public hearing at this stage first, and then town council after, and then I think we gotta come back here after that. So, yeah, I mean, we've got months and months of still looking at this thing.
Well, and that's the point, so you're gonna hold a public hearing to get you past the substantive, and you know that.
Yep.
And then we're gonna catch the paper and the deal and the negotiations and things that Chris and staff will work on with you and staff, and engineers.
Okay. Yeah, we'll discuss that internally if we're ready, if this is the plan that we want to present, if we're ready to go forward in August. If not, it could be September. We'll have to, I guess we'll have to decide.
Well, my suggestion is gonna be that we have at least one more work session, because I want answers, questions like you brought up, or people here brought up, before I say yea or nay to this. So, I mean, I'm not ready to hear it in August, unless you've got a whole bunch of questions answered in the work session in August.
I can come back to the work session in August.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it that way.
I mean,
Agree?
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah. All right.
I won't have the traffic study yet, but.
Well, we
it's
understand
ongoing.
that, but,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
there's a lot of other questions you can answer for us.
There'll be a lot of things we're going to.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Get there.
All right, I will see you in a month.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Number 2, Seal Tide Exteriors Concept Plan. Owner, Seal Tide Exteriors, 3239 Love Rock Avenue, Steger, Illinois. Petitioner Adam McAlpine, TE 398 East 400 North Valparaiso, Indiana, vicinity of 13741 Osborne Street, Chicago Lake, Cedar Lake, Chicago Lake. Petitioner is requesting a concept plan for a site plan for a new business in the Lakeview Business Park. Do we have a petitioner?
Nobody online?
Online? No?
Jack Halls, is this yours?
No.
No petitioner? Was he notified, Ashley?
He was told that they would appear on the July agenda for concept, and if they showed up August for site plan.
Well, there's not much to talk about.
Seems like they did a lot of work to not show up.
I can reach out to them and see if they'll be at the next
You
work.
can reach out to them again. If they don't show next time, then that's, okay. Number 3, 141st Partners Final Plat, owner of 141st Partners LLC, Mike Neubauer, 2802 East 139th Avenue, Crown Point. Petitioner 141st Partners LLC, 2802 East 139th Avenue, Crown Point. Vicinity of 10702 West 141st Avenue, Cedar Lake. Petitioner is requesting the final plat for a one-lot subdivision. Hi.
Hello, how are you? Mike Neubauer, 2802 East 139th Avenue, Crown Point.
John, and I'm Russ Posen with DVG. Kind of looking at the request here, actually coordinating, excuse me, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, coordinating with my client. He was actually, has been kind of hard at work and actually installing the infrastructure and doing construction as we speak. So I think the discussion I kind of want to have tonight is that we might want to actually either defer or pull the final plat request, because we do have the letter of credit recommendation, but he'll be done with the infrastructure that a majority of this is it entails in August, and then there's some other infrastructure, public infrastructure that will be done, early fall, that would actually, obviously we get an as-built, we get an inspection, that would kind of lead us to submit a different request with a lower letter of credit and actually coordinate with Don that we would want to use at the final plat hearing to be a part of record and then to use to get our final approval. So I kind of want to discuss that with the town, logistics, and kind of see if the town would be amenable to us actually just deferring this to, I would say, probably October, November.
Russ, if you guys defer to October, November, when are you anticipating pulling your first building permit? Because we've already extended your use variance once. You can only get one use variance extension. I don't want us running up into May
Correct.
next year, and all of a sudden, we're now having to re-go through the use variance.
Exactly, we don't want to hit that at all. And that is for, we have extended till May of next year?
May of next year.
May of next year. So I'll let Mike kind of get into logistics, exactly of the timing, but August of this year, the infrastructure, the underground, will be done. Sometime in October, a lot of the paving will be done. I guess I'll let you maybe speak a little high level. For phase one, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of generalities. I was hoping to be moving quicker than we are, honestly, but, black dirt's all removed, so they're starting underground, so it's just a matter of kind of coordinating when the underground finishes, kind of get that heavy equipment out there, and then the asphalt guys will start coming in with the concrete guys to lay the, building pads. So we're hoping, playing with the clock, hoping to have all the concrete, asphalt stuff ready to rock and roll before winter time comes. Buildings have already been ordered, everything's ready to go. They show up on a semi, they'll have them up in, a month or so, all the buildings, so
So Mike,
hopefully
you can't put those buildings up without building permits. You cannot get the building permits until final plat is done and recorded.
yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just letting you know, because buildings are a year out, so we had to pre-order the steel and have everything ready to go a year out, so, just letting you know, yeah, like, we're not ordering today, and the the material won't even show up until July or something of next year. We're already, as quick as the guys can work, we have kind of the next people ready to go. So yeah, probably around August, I would assume the underground stuff will be done, then concrete guys will start coming in, so depending on the weather, how quick winter shows up or doesn't show up, it depend on how quickly we're ready to pull building permits and start going vertical.
So logistically, with the install being done in August, and that being, again, the water main, that's the majority of our letter of credit that we'd like to get, a little bit lower before we get that finalized, get it, coordinated, and then get the final approval. So that's where I think still the October still, I think, works when it comes to setting that time frame. Again, this is why I'd like to have a discussion with you about the timing, because we could get if we get it in, October, that would be an October final plan commission for study session, then we would record it in the month of October, assuming everything gets approved, and then I think we'd be all, clear as he's doing more construction.
Ashley, are we holding any surety on this?
Nothing until, the final plat's approved and the performance letter of credit is done.
So we have no surety. All we can do is drive by and watch the trucks and front loaders.
Yep, we have nothing on the books yet.
It's not ready, it's not ready.
Well, I guess,
If the pleasure is to hold this till October, or Russ reaches out and asks to put this back on the agenda,
Well,
and be taken off till then.
if they're not ready to move forward on their request here, then there's nothing we can do, right?
I mean, this is really up to the petitioner and the owner.
Yeah.
Right now, our letter has a full freight letter of credit. If he wants to install infrastructure, get it approved, get it as-built it, get it inspected, we can reduce it accordingly. When he comes in, it's up to him.
I don't see a problem with it. If he's ready in October, then October. Come back in October and see us. Just stay within your parameters of your timeline here. 'Cause like, as I said, you can't get another extension.
Is there an issue we're not seeing, Dave?
There's a big hole in the middle of this ground for storm drainage, and I don't think we can buy it and look at it much.
I know there's a big hole over there, but
I mean, they have a preliminary plat
you
approval, they can
do you
install
have
it.
suggestions for us?
No, we're stuck.
How'd we get this far?
Shouldn't have.
Well, we have our
They have preliminary plat.
we have preliminary plat approval
They can
and with
install
approval
utilities.
too, so we can install this as we are.
They have an MS4 permit,
Correct.
we're inspecting that. Outside of that, until they come for final plat and we set a letter of credit, it's on him.
Yeah, we're within ordinance regulations.
That's what happens when we hurry at the beginning. backside turns out like this.
We'll get an argument out of me there.
You know, are we missing something? Is something we're supposed to be doing? I mean,
I'm wondering if I'm missing something. Any other questions?
No.
No, I guess we'll see you back in October, and, I know you guys will come back with some really good news then.
Unless you need to be here sooner, to talk to Ashley.
Yeah,
Before next up?
if you can be, sooner, yeah. All right, thanks. Number 4, Birchwood, Phase 5, final plat, owner petitioner, Hanover Development LLC, 8051 Wicker Avenue, St. John, vicinity approximately 12400 Wicker Avenue, Cedar Lake. Petitioner is requesting the final plat for Birchwood Farm, Phase 5. Hi, Jay.
Hello, Jeff Yasko, Old Tough Homes. We will be seeking final plat approval for Birchwood Phase 5. These are the last 4 lots of Birchwood. If you recall, a few months ago, we had a title issue with a few lots. So I came in, did a PUD amendment, and we actually removed 2 lots out of Birchwood, which was lots 1 and 2. So these will actually, it's highlighted there on the screen, there's a few lots that are still not platted right at the entrance. So this would be lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, that would complete everything. The roads are in, the roads are actually put in as part of Phase 1. All the utilities are in. Don's reviewing that all now, so I think we'd be in order to get that done.
Last 4 lots on subdivision. Letter of credit's really only attributed to remaining storm sewer, which I think is 250 feet of pipe. All the sidewalk, all the pavement, all of the sanitary and water was part of phases 1 and 4. So that would be the only part of letter of credit. We have as-built for review. We've already reviewed it. I sent you an email this afternoon. We had 2 small comments on the plat itself. It's really just going to be a matter of, you'll see on, I think, your next item is phases 1 through 3, or at the end of the agenda. Number 6, if we can get everything tied up in the next 2 weeks, we might lump it in with phases 1 through 3. There's also phase 4 that's getting close to being finished as well. It would be great if we could get it into one maintenance letter of credit, but it's all got to kind of line up.
Yeah, not to jump ahead, but we haven't even serviced Phase 4 yet.
Okay, never mind then.
That one's next year.
Okay. So, yeah, 5 may come with 4. We'll see where we end up. So we'll have something more concrete in 2 weeks.
So we can see them next in 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Nothing? See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, Cynthia, final plat. Owner petitioner, CL 133 LLC, 9901 Express Drive, Highland, Indiana. Vicinity 9720 West 133rd Avenue, Cedar Lake. Petitioner is requesting a final plat for a 2-lot subdivision. Good evening.
Good evening. Bruce Boyer of Boyer Properties and CL 133 LLC. We've been before you in the past working through the PUD documents for the Centier Bank project on 133rd. We're here tonight with the final plat review. We've received Russ Polson from DVG is with me. We received from Don today the review letter. We don't have any issue with that. There's one question we need to answer regarding the sewer easement. But we're fine with the inspection fees, we're fine with the letter of credit, and we'd like to see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we have one comment on the final plat. We have all 3 numbers, or actually 2 numbers for this one, for the inspection fee and for the letter of credit, which is primarily just improvement along the north side of 133rd. They're going to be cutting out some curb, kind of realigning some of their entrances, and that's, I think, repouring all the sidewalk as well. So that's a bulk of the letter of credit, but they should be ready in 2 weeks.
We'll have everything submitted to you before the meeting.
Any comments, questions?
Not on that one.
Nope. See you in 2 weeks.
Very good, thank you.
Number 6, Birchwood Farm, conversion performance letter of credit to maintenance letter of credit for phase 1, 2, 3, or 1 to 3?
1 through 3. Jeff Yatsko, Old Top Homes. So we're seeking to convert our performance letter of credits for phases 1, 2, and 3 to maintenance. With discussion with Don, we thought we would lump this into one maintenance letter of credit as long as the commission was okay with that. We did receive a punch list a few weeks ago. We worked through that punch list. I think there might be a few minor things, but again, that's what we'll be seeking to do, is roll that into a maintenance letter of credit.
Yeah, phase 1's been completed we did our punch list earlier this year. We just went out and re-inspected 2 and 3 for that punch list, and I think everything is together except some minor staging items, which we'll get to more in the fall when we actually have good weather for that. Besides that, I think we'll be ready to convert.
Anybody have any questions? Discussion? No?
And just to make sure you're okay with me wrapping that into one? No problem?
I don't see a problem if somebody else does.
It's generally less paperwork, less to track,
Let's look at.
less to look at.
Sure.
It's better for everybody.
Works for me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Update items, building regulations and fee amendments.
To give a small update, I should have something for you before, I'll have something to give to Ashley, because she'll have a component to add, but approximately a 20% increase is what we're looking at in some of our building fee-related items, and then there'll be some changes for application and things like that.
Okay. Beacon Point East, Unit 2, performance letter of credit expires July 28, 2023.
I believe that they are going to be looking at extending items 1, or 2, 3, 4, and 5. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, Jack.
That's correct.
So I should have something for you guys on the next agenda for extensions on all 4 of those items related to Beacon Point.
Okay. Number 6, Rose Garden Estates, Unit 3, performance letter of credit expires August 22nd, 2023.
I got nothing.
You got
They
nothing?
haven't gotten back in touch with us ever since we sent the punch list out for 2 and 3. We have not received any as-bills. We have not received a request to do below-ground inspections with Public Works, and that is all I know.
When is our meeting in August, the public meeting?
16th, I think, let me double check.
We discussed last time having legal get involved with it, correct?
And then
August
Yeah, it
16th.
was. They're not in any legal non-compliance yet. If we can go right up to the expiration date and call that thing. Of course, we don't want to call it, then Don will be running that job. But
Well, my question is, on August 16th, we can set a pull date and pull it, right?
I would say in your August meeting, it's going to be discussed substantively for correction.
Yeah, so I mean, if we don't hear from them, then,
I mean, we'll try them again. I mean, it's at minimum gonna have to be at least reduced, but we need time to reduce it. So most likely, considering it's July 5th now,
No way.
and we've never heard from them, it's going to be renewed at full freight or pulled on it. Period.
so we could either act on this in 2 weeks, or we can do it in August meeting.
I'd do it in August.
There's enough time from your August meeting.
All right, then, that's what we'll do.
It is a financial institution in California, so we'll public.
So if you see a, bill for flights to California, that's what it's for.
From who?
It'll be itemized under where they're addressed.
Do you need a caddy?
You know, that's a good idea. Glad you thought of that, Jeff.
Number 8, Centennial, Phase 12, maintenance letter of credit expires October 13th, 2023.
Yeah, that's gonna be on your agenda in 2 weeks to convert it, along with 2 and 3.
Okay. Number 9, Rose Garden, State Unit 1, performance letter of credit expires October 14th.
We are in the process of doing our final inspections for that. They'll probably take place, at least on our end at Seville, either end of this week or next week. Public Works has been notified to initiate their underground inspections, and then we'll be doing that up to October.
Okay. Okay, number 10, ordinance 1458, 133rd Commercial Corridor Overlay District.
All right. So, on the iPad, there are 2 items labeled U10. The first one is that zoning map that Heather, you requested next time this is discussed about it, put on the iPad. The second one is kind of, there's 4 kind of styles that I researched, put together, and decided to come to the Plan Commission, see which one you all like the best, so that we as a staff can then go and begin researching that form base to be able to get that into an ordinance. So just some general stuff is the black aluminum poles that we've started putting along there. So for the lighting poles, directional poles, street sign poles, traffic sign poles, that would be the black aluminum poles. We'd look at incorporating landscaping so that we could then look at having specific landscaping along there, making it nice along there. The first style, no underlying theme was given, just kind of basic standards where your buildings are made of brick, wood, or stucco with primary colors of brown, grays, or white, with the line for secondary colors of blues, reds, blacks, or orange. As you can see from the pictures, they're not very inspiring, but that's just kind of one potential style if we want to look at just kind of creating a style that could be incorporated in there. The second one is based off the Brownsburg Colonial that you see on Broadway, you see in Valpo, what's going up in St. John. So you're looking at mainly brick facades with some windows, colors of reds, browns, grays, or white. Most of them have a form of a square column incorporated either in the awnings or in the building itself. The windows are either framed in black or white metal and allowing for the color variations for the business logo or color themes of the franchise.
Let me interrupt you a minute. Are we saying that we want every building to look the same?
There's 2 more. There's 2 more.
The answer is no.
No, because...
The answer is no. This is form-based. This is a process by which you identify and describe generally what you seek or what you think is aesthetically pleasing in the town that you like. Not St. John, not Valparaiso, but it's by way of example. This is how planning works when you're getting into the depths of how you want your community to look. And none of these have to be built. Just
Some of it's off.
developers come along
Did you see that?
and have an idea of what the community's looking for.
That's why these are just styles that I've researched that are typically common around areas that I wanted to bring to you. And if you like a specific style or theme over the other, we could then look at that and begin creating a form base that you guys like and you would like to see aesthetically pleasing. The third one takes into consideration the town. The namesake of the town is a lake. So why not incorporate that lake theme onto that building and go with more of a nautical theme or design? Your buildings would then have a shiplap or shiplap style exterior, built of brick or stucco as well as that wood, and have curves encouraged into either the design or painted onto the side, something like that. Colors would be whites, browns, blues, and grays, with consideration given for company logos. There's a few examples of those in there as well, of what they kind of look like. One of which is something that's coming very soon to the town, the Sentier.
Well, you know, you're not gonna tell Culvers that you're gonna put up a building like that, you know. So, you know, my thinking was that you wanna get an architectural style or some architecture to follow, to dress up that corridor. I was thinking more along the lines that you wanna tell them, oh, you gotta have a brick building. You have to have a certain kind of landscaping, you know, or 4 trees and 27 bushes or something, I don't know. but something along those lines, or your sidewalk has to be brick, or something along those lines. But not say, look at this building, you got a Popeyes in here, build it like Popeyes and put your logo on it. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, it's gotta be like somebody's subdivision, PUD says, or covenant say, you have to have 10% brick. That's what I'm thinking of.
And those were just examples, I'm not saying go
Yeah, I
with those
understand,
buildings, just whichever way you guys want it to go, how you want it to be formed. That way, we as a staff and consultants have an idea of what you're looking for so that it can then be incorporated in and the proper forms created so that all those buildings can then be the 10% brick, or putting in brick sidewalks, 4 shrubs, 2 trees, where they need to be, stuff like that. So this is kind of just trying to see what it is that you're wanting me and Chris and Dave to look at so that we can then research the appropriate form and create that form for you.
Comments?
I have, some of this scares me to death, but, I'm more concerned for the 133rd corridor. I was more concerned about uses than, I mean, if there needs to be a standard, I guess there needs to be a standard, but
I don't even know who brought it up.
Judging from what I'm seeing here, better be careful with it.
It was mentioned at one of the previous meetings, looking at an architectural style to incorporate.
And this is just information she's brought to us, so that maybe we see something in there that we like, and we want to see that in the design of a building, correct?
Correct.
What are we trying to achieve on this overlay district?
To create a cohesive corridor of our main entrance into our town leading towards our lake that is more pedestrian friendly, works towards achieving what our comprehensive plan, and to limit the heavier intensive uses out of that corridor and move them to where we want them to be, which is the US 41 corridor.
Also the protection of property values and the protection of the town's investment in the corridor.
I have to give that some thought.
And that's why these are just examples. That I would like to have your input, and if you guys have anything different that you would like to see, please, by all means, let me know so that I can then research it, so we can look for what it is that you're wanting to see architecturally on that corridor.
Well, who brought up the architectural standard? I thought it came from over at that table
It
someplace.
did, it came from this table here, and I was
Pardon?
it came from this table over here when we were talking about compatibility of banks versus auto repair shops.
And it also came from John Foreman, who at one time said we need to have all brick building, or brick fronts at least, and not just metal, buildings out there. Make us look a little more classy.
Well, existing buildings remain the same, you're not gonna have.
Yeah, we can't change them.
No.
So we got, what, 12 lots there?
Well, if they come in and redevelopment a building, then you'll have the standards.
Yeah, if they come in and redevelop the building. But vacant lots right now, how many vacant lots do we have?
You have several, but this is, as Bob kind of explained, this is to long-range planning for the community. What do you want to see that corridor develop into? This would be setting that standard, style, theme, or et cetera. Maybe it is, brick sidewalks. As you redevelop your parcel, you have to change that into bricks. But this is for the long haul. As this corridor redevelops, that is what it's going to look like.
I haven't thought about any of that at all. My concerns were uses in the corridor since, I sound like a broken record, but all the work that went into cleaning that up and getting it functional, and we go backwards.
That is certainly a component of overlay districts.
And I've voiced all my concerns, I mean, these constructions or, design standards, I haven't given that any thought at all. I'm willing to though.
The current iteration as it sits restricts anything that's higher than a B2, which would then restrict your automobile shops or, I'm blanking on some more off the top of my head, so give me 2 seconds to dig.
Actually, I don't know if that it's even necessary for you to dig in there, because with 2 business parks going in, I'm hoping that what happens in the future, those things get directed to the business park where they belong. But who knows what's gonna happen here? So, if there's 12 potential building sites left in the corridor, then I guess we have to try to, anticipate what's gonna get built out there.
You wanna be in front of it, so that the vision's there when people come in here, and they're looking at what our plans are married to their plan.
Well, a good example, I think, of what would look pretty good there is Summerlin's business plaza there.
Yeah, they did a nice job on that.
I mean, you know, and you could kind of design the building a little bit as to what's going in there. You know, you got a Pops there, you got a great bakery there.
And the building, the signs there, I mean.
Yeah, so I mean, if you, I didn't mean to interrupt you, go ahead.
I just agree with you,
Okay.
as usual.
I think there's some great designs there, and I think we could utilize that if you want to set some sort of a standard. Based on something along those lines.
I think she brought this for us to think about it. We're not going to make a decision real quickly.
No, this is just to bring it to you to start getting you all thinking and telling me what it is that you're wanting. Right now I'm hearing Summerlin's Plaza, and existing buildings in there. So I'll go take a look at Summerlin's Plaza, potentially the morgues, because I know that's been recently redeveloped. If there's any other buildings in particular, any other staff, please just let me know. So that
Hidge did a nice job on the King building, I mean,
that's where the morgues is now.
is that where Morgs is?
Mhm.
And also on the old Guards Laundromat too, he did.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that's the same building.
Just don't get the same guy who designs all the parking lots, get somebody who knows what they're doing. I always get lost.
I don't think I wanted to hear that.
All right, we got any other discussions on this? No? Got enough to think about there for a while, Ashley?
I always have enough to think about, enough to do as well.
Okay. Okay, if not, then, let's go to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Please step up and give us your name and address, please.
Mary Joan Dixon, 8711 West 100th, second place. And listening to the Lakeside development, at one point there was discussion there's going to be quite a few older people there. So I questioned, should there be playground equipment or should there be something that older people would enjoy? We get a lot of complaints from one subdivision that we put playground equipment in. Those older people just wanted a shelter, you know, a place they could gather because they're not going to play on playground equipment. So I just thought we should look at what's making up the subdivision to define what the park is. And then I don't know if the town, we're talking about that there's going to be mostly older single people. They're most likely going to go to Crown Point schools. But yet in the report it said that there'll be less children in that subdivision. So why are we directing them to Crown Point? I think we should really concentrate in directing them back down to spend money, to, you know, be part of our.
No, he's talking about the school district.
Pardon me?
The school district will be Crown Point, so
Correct, but then it says
that's why
there'll
they'll be heading that way, because that's where our kids will be having
Okay.
activities.
So, but the majority of the people who don't have children, will they be coming this way? Is what
I don't
I'm saying
know.
about the
That's
traffic
still-
study. That's what I'm just asking.
Yeah.
And then,
That traffic study's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
and then, the paths, are they ADA?
They have to be.
Okay, I just
Yep.
want, I have not gone on one, so thank you very much.
As far as pavilions in a park, I think every park should have a pavilion with some benches in it,
If they,
along with the play equipment, but.
that lakeside too, if they come up to 70, a minimum of 70-foot lots in there, each lot would be a minimum of 9,450 square feet, which is almost the square footage
Of standard lot.
of a standard lot.
Yeah, for our two.
So that's, I mean, if they would come up to those 70-foot minimums by 135, it's not awful. So, I did some quick math on some of the things that they were proposing, and if 70 foot is the minimum, I don't know how we get much better than that out of them. Everything but the bare bills would be that minimum square footage.
Well,
So the Paradogs are 90.
Yeah, they're 90, but they got a duplex on them.
these are RT standards. Our RT standards calls for paired villas or duplexes to be 80 by 125. By doing the 90 by 135, they're exceeding on each RT slot is 12,150 square feet.
I think that that's better than standard most of the time anyway for the parent villas too, so. And that's what I'm gonna look at, I think, from a pragmatic standpoint, is what the square footage of the lot is, because they did go deeper than what typically comes with.
Hey, any other? Chuck, come on up.
Chuck Becker, 6100 West 136 Lake Cedar Lake. I had a question about the TIF window. You said there's a 4-year window to get the money. This is a 10-year project. How's that going to work out?
The state has authorized them to be created within the next 4 years. They live for 20 years.
They live for 20 years, okay.
Correct.
Okay, so that's why I was confused when you said a 4-year window, and if this is going to be a 10-year. And one thing, as everyone knows on this board, knows from the past, we commit to a 10-year project, you know, with multifamily and everything else. Look what happened in 2009. How many subdivisions we get stuck with multifamily because what they approved in 2009 before the economy crashed. And here it is, 2021, 2022, that we have to honor this multifamily. But yet, here our town's grown so much. Back then, the town wasn't that big.
Dave, I think I asked you this before, could there be, on subdivision approvals going forward, could there be an expiration on the plat if it isn't built, where it reverts back upon the approval? When it gets approval, if it doesn't get built within a certain time period, then it reverts back to its original plat and its original zoning. Is that plausible or possible?
Yeah, it would be. Actually, you as a body overseeing the plat jurisdiction may impose reasonable conditions. Relying upon that scenario described by Chuck, you could pick a time, 3 years, 4 years, 1 year. It's in the book, I think it's in our book subdivision control as well, for primary plat.
I thought we made it 2 years at one time.
Well, I don't think so.
No?
I think it's talked about here a couple of times. This is the first time it's come up here. The other important item is that most of the projects, like Jack's, are PUDs. And in that PUD, you can develop an expiration date, just like the letter of credit surety date. Effective date when it starts, termination date when it ends. So those are reasonable conditions.
And I'm sure a developer like Shelley wouldn't have a problem with an expiration date, because they typically build out whatever it is that they get zoned and platted.
And it would be reasonable. It would be, business reasonable.
But some of the other things that happened, like Chuck's talking about in 2007, 2006, and everybody, with what was going on at the time, everybody thought it was a good idea to approve those and plat those, but they didn't have expirations, correct?
They didn't have an expiration, but they did have lack of compliance with the terms of approval. So the town was protected in the event it ever came down to it, was in those terms. And they missed those terms, they weren't going to develop a plat or a subdivision plat as was initially approved.
Like in 2011, during that crunch, we only issued 30 building permits that year. In 2021, we issued 396, 2022, 245, and so far this year, 38.
So in addition to that, if development came in 2008 or 2009, and a couple of them did on the west side of town, along Parish, farmed by a longtime farmer, their term of surety expired. We weren't talking about what became BPDs and Centennial and those things. There were no surety. They weren't going to pull a permit here. They would have had to come back here. So, control it by terms of approval and ROI.
So when a PUD, say a PUD gets approval, it should be in the language for the approval, when it expires and what the performance.
It could be, for sure it could be. It's one of those terms that can be embedded into a PUD agreement. It's one of the reasons why taking just a deep breath and failing slowly and calculating the terms that need to be in each individual PUD, commercial or residential project needs to take place. Instead of kind of quickly glossing over.
And Greg, we've required phasing schedules in the last several PUDs. I actually think it's part of the zoning ordinance, and we require a phase agreement effectively. You need phase one, your max number of phases, stuff like that. So they don't drag it out like Centennial would drag it out, back in the day where we had 15. Which is a lot of work for staff to do with all the different letter of credits and timing out and, yeah.
I think what's frustrating from our perspective and Chuck's when he was here is that stuff got approved when somebody else purchases it. They in their minds, they've purchased the development. We don't have anything to argue with it.
And we're handcuffed.
And we're handcuffed and just.
Are you talking about somebody buying an existing PUD that's been approved?
Yes.
I think we
like the Brook
addressed that in
Farm.
Oak Brook, I think, if it exchanged hands. I think you actually came in for a PUD amendment, because you changed your LLC name or something, right? If it changed hands, your PUD would go out the window. So we kind of addressed that, and that was one of the later ones we've done. So we tried to capture that as well.
Because the recession's coming. I work in trucking. We see it, the same thing happened in 2009, where I'm seeing it now.
Well, that 35 building permits is probably indicative of that.
Right.
Already here.
Exactly.
And in the same aspect of what Greg said, can you also start a set date? That you have to start the project within a year or something, or?
Didn't catch that.
Pardon?
We didn't catch.
Can you set a start date? As opposed,
That start date's within your ordinance.
like you have to start your project within a year?
It's either in the ordinance or you can require it.
Again, I think we had that in Oak Brook, actually. Something similar, a start date. So,
And
yes.
the ordinance, currently, the subdivision control ordinance allows for a preliminary plat to be good for 1 year unless an extension is granted from this body. And then once it's been, they get final plat approved, they have 6 months from final plat approval to get their letter of credit in order to pay their developer billing, to do their MS4 and 3% inspection fee and get the final plat reported, otherwise it expires. So there are some fail-safes built into the ordinance that if they don't extend their preliminary plat in a timely fashion, if they don't get their final plat recorded in a timely fashion, it expires.
So that's in today's market,
That's in the current ordinance for subdivision control.
but that doesn't apply to 15 years ago.
That ordinance has been around since 1989.
So do those couple of projects that haven't started yet for 15 years, do they fall under that, or does that create a
Forever
situation?
chance of starting without coming back here.
Pardon?
They don't have a forever chance of starting unless they come back here.
What about the zoning? Is the zoning the
Depends
same?
on how the zoning was approved, right?
That's good information.
And then also Lakeside, the second phase of Lakeside, they're waiting for the water to come through, but we got the water all the way down to 141st on the backside of Lakeside itself, correct?
We do have water.
They have enough capacity to build out an extra 50 to 55 units in that subdivision right now, same.
Well, don't they have to connect it to the water tower? They have to run it through.
Not for the phase 2 of Lakeside, is my understanding. Jack, is that correct?
That's correct.
There's enough capacity
for that phase.
Yes.
People were talking about their playground equipment, they're waiting on the playground equipment.
It's different than the water line.
I know, but for phase 2, I'm talking about. And then if the water line's already, have to get, you know, the original Lakeside before they bought that. Why are we, you know,
He's talking about phase 2 of the first 200.
Correct.
He's not talking about the concept
I'm talking about the original Lakeside,
Yeah, okay.
to finish that out. Because we already got the water line down 141st. Now, they're just waiting for us to approve the backside, the south, to run it through, correct? That's what they're,
Are you talking from north to south, from 131st?
from south going north. Are we running the water line from 141st, running it north to?
The north-south.
But we have to run it all the way up north to connect to Robin's Nest and the Lakeside.
I think it's a little more complicated. I think there's participation. I don't have those details. I mean, Chris, I don't know if you do.
In my understanding, they're gonna do
Complicated
that.
relationship.
Because we already got it to their property.
Right.
So
Right, Dan?
That's right.
So Lakeside South, I would have no problem if they just duplicate what they did in Lakeside. You know, those type of houses, those, and the same as Robin's Nest. So if you, 200, additional 200 houses on the one side, another 207, 200, and, you know, 20 or 30, you know, that's 400 and some odd houses. That's better than 550. You know, 1,100 cars at least. I mean, and then you can't count green space as retention ponds. I mean, just can't. That's my thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Hello.
Barb Orgy, 10290 West 138th Place. So, a lot of talk about with the Lakeside South about the targeted age group that they want to sell properties to. Well, I'm the targeted age group, and I actually am probably the only one in this room that lives in one of the duplex villas. Yes.
There goes.
Anybody else? So I know what it's like to live in one of those. And I know that a lot of people, or a lot of the units where I live, and it's only, maybe up to maybe around 30 residences, but most of them are retired people, and there's a lot of single widows and single ladies that are older. So one of the reasons we moved to a unit like that is because it is maintenance free. Because you get too old, you either don't want to, or you can't do it anymore. So you get that, and it sounds really okay, and mostly it is. But what I have where I live is my lot, my half of the lot is 50 by 150, and that sounds really small, but coming where I came from the city, it's really not. So, I get it, but I don't. But what I would say about it in terms of, we're all looking at the square footage of the lot. Well, I have an HOA, and I have rules. So what happens with these maintenance-free units is that you have yard, but you can't have a fence, you can't have a fire pit, you can't have a gazebo, you can't have trees. basically what you have is grass that you can't even do anything with it. You just look at it and hopefully they'll water it when they're supposed to. So I could live without a smaller lot, and I guess a lot of these other targeted folks probably could too. But I think that what we would appreciate more is to have more open space and more green space. So I like the idea of a trail, but I have some issues with, and I didn't, sorry, we didn't get to see what things look like, but a trail is nice when it has trees, a lot of trees surrounding it, and some benches. And water features are nice if they're more than a hole in the ground with water and a fountain. So, and the playground, that's the other thing. From what I saw last time, they put a playground in the south corner of this parcel of land, which if I'm living pretty far north or pretty far on the west side and I'm grandma and my kids coming over, am I really gonna have to drive over there to use the playground? Is that a really good place to put it? Why can't it be placed in a more central location eventually? Well, yeah, but because I'll tell you what in my subdivision, we have a playground, and it's in pretty much close to where the entrance is to the subdivision. And it's in a lot, and it's a huge lot, and there's no trees. There's 0 trees. And there's a gravel pathway, and there's a couple benches there. So imagine, for me, I have to walk 6 or 7 or 8 blocks if I was wheeling somebody's stroller there. I have to take them in the car to go to the lot. That's kind of sad. And the other thing is, on a day like today, who's going to go out there? It's 90 degrees outside. There's no shade. There's no water. And the equipment's hotter than Hades. And I will tell you how many times I go by there, the people that even use it, it's almost, no one ever uses it. And the reason, and those are the reasons why. And not only that, if you're looking at single-family homes with kids using a play lot, most of the people that can afford to buy those homes buy their own playground equipment and put it in their backyard. And that's the reality of it. So it sounds nice, and I mean, I'm not against having a playground, but I just don't think that, what's being presented with this subdivision is really anything that hot, And the other piece to this all is, I bike by that parcel of land, and I like going over there because it's quiet, narrow road, and it's good for biking, okay? But what I see when I go by that plot are trees, and there are trees. And there are trees on the south, on 141st, and up on the west end where I guess the creek is. And there's a small line of trees between, I guess, Robin's Nest and what would be this parcel. But there's also a stand of trees in the interior of this parcel. So every time I see trees, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be nice if they could keep those trees? And if you're going to put a playground in, why don't you put the playground or the water feature by the trees instead of what's probably being planned is that we're going to chop as many trees down as we can because it's easier to build that way. And then we're going to we're going to put more trees in. And I know what kind of trees that get put in. Maybe 20, 30 years, maybe they'll grow up to provide some shade, and maybe, I mean, I've been living here a year. I never see a squirrel. you know, it's kind of sad. It's very, really.
Over my yard.
Well, yeah, but this is what I'm saying, is it's kind of sad because you have trees that you already have. Why can't you keep as many trees as you can? And I think there is actually something, I didn't have a chance to print it out so I could read it, but in the town ordinance for residential development, it talks about features of the land that are there that in essence are valuable. Well, I happen to think trees are very, very valuable, and I think it's a shame whenever developers come in and they chop them all down, and then they start with these little stick trees that take forever to grow, and they don't provide a place for nature, they don't provide shade for people that are living there, and they make so many of these subdivisions look just burned out. It's very sad. So I would like, you know, that to be a consideration as well, and I don't see why it can't be done. As a matter of fact, I think somebody had mentioned, what is that, from the Copper Creek or something over there. I went through there one day just to see what it was like. And yeah, it starts out pretty nicely and stuff, but one of the things that they did was actually put their playground in a stand of trees that was already there. And I thought, wow, that's the way to do it.
That's the Schilling development.
Well, they used the trees. Hey, I thought it was a nice idea, and I thought about it myself before I went there, because I had never seen it before. And I thought, what a shame it is. If you've got two water features, which more could be done with water features, I mean, seriously. That's another thing that all people do is look at them. They're useless. They're useless. I'm sorry, but they're useless.
You gotta have them in a subdivision
So-
for detention or retention now.
Well, no, I understand that. However, you can have a hole in the ground with water and a fountain, or you can have a hole in the ground with water and some natural vegetation and other things, but that costs money to do and to maintain. You put natural vegetation, it keeps the geese away, and you know what the geese leave when they, because I see that all the time where I am. So, you know, and if you were really nice, you could put a little boardwalk or a deck so Grandpa can take, you know, little Susie over there and teach her how to fish. That's more of a community that I really like to live in. So that's all I'm going to say. You know, I'm fortunate, at least with my particular unit, that I have a wetland between myself and the people on the other side. And that was one of the big reasons that I purchased there. Because people my age, people of a lot of ages, they like nature, they like to be outdoors, but, you know, you need trees and you need shade and you need a place to go. There's a couple other issues I have with it, but I'm going to stop and I'll save it for next time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I'll say one last thing to you.
Yes.
My house
Yes.
has catappa trees all around it.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yeah, they have this, yeah, I know.
yeah, and Fairbanks,
Yes.
before Lemon Lake Estates and Crystal Oaks was built, the whole street had catappa trees. All I had suggested changing the name to Catappa Street.
You get bombarded with the.
Yeah, and people don't like them, but I love the flowery smell. They don't stay long, but it leaves a
Right.
beautiful fragrance.
Well, unfortunately, I think to most developers, tree is a four-letter word. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any more public comments? Good evening.
Hi, Gail Brannon, 7014 West 139th Place. Want to thank you for considering, you know, what the people want is to see not dense housing going further from here. I had a question about a PUD. If it in a PUD, are they responsible for the roads and the sidewalks, or does the town take care of them?
The developer is required to put in all the required infrastructure as part of the development that's in our ordinances. They maintain it for the performance letter of credit period. Once it goes to maintenance letter period, we inspect it, and then as long as everything is good and acceptable to town standards, and it rolls over into maintenance letter of credit, it's then accepted into the town's inventory for maintenance and taken care of.
Very good.
So it's borne by the developer
Thank you.
for the infrastructure improvement.
One more question. When a PUD, when a developer fails for some reason, on the HOA, what happens then? I had heard that the Woods of Cedar Creek that their, HOA the developer went bankrupt, and that, what happens with that HOA at that time?
The town doesn't maintain the HOA. So if the HOA goes defunct or they decide to take away, disassemble the articles of incorporation, the town has no control over that. We don't maintain or enforce HOA or their rules, covenants, and restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
I actually live there, they still have an HOA.
Oh, they do?
We do.
Okay.
Volunteers.
Any other comments? Hello.
Hello, Bob Ben Ramshorst, 14507 Lakeshore Drive. I just have a question that we have a lot of people wanting to build in this town, and it seems to be growing, and that's all well and good. They put a lot of extra future costs on our town in fire, police, and everywhere else along that. Are we getting enough money up front from the builders to negate the impact that it's going to have later on, after they've already cashed that check and ran it to the next town?
Probably not.
Could we start doing that?
Residential housing tip is a powerful tool for that effect, exactly.
And there's no town around that people are wanting as much as us, and so many other towns have got impact fees and things like that. I can't imagine we're not on top of that, and the rest of them down here.
I wanted to do impact fees a long time ago.
Well, we're gonna do it once the place is built out, then we'll go, hey, we should have had some impact fees, we should have,
I'm saying that now.
let's say it now loud.
And actually, other people are saying it now.
All right, let's say it real loud.
No one wanted to hear it 6 years ago.
We do have a impact fee, we have a park impact fee that's $1,762 per building permit. But in order to install an impact fee, we have to do a litany of studies. I don't know if you want to talk more on that one, Greg.
We don't need to put in rules that bind us that we have to do all this to be able to collect this fee. You wanna build a home here from now on, it's gonna cost you this up front.
All right,
No, we do have to follow state law when implementing impact fees. It's very much controlled by state legislation.
Right, but I'm sure there's such a thing, I'm sure we're not the first ones doing it.
it's not impact fees, but we have a system development fee. And that's quite expensive for a new home builder. What are?
Right,
It's a $500 sewer tax.
That's on your
it's a $35
handout I gave out. It shows it per unit.
He does show on the one fee, the east side development fee is at $730 for the water tap, $2,556 for the east side water development. The west side is a higher rate. I don't have that number off the top of my head. But the tap fee is the same with the $730 on both sides. It doesn't matter west side or east side.
And then there's sewer, system development.
Right, that's at $500 and $3,500.
And that's not what I'm talking about. We could still have a fee to come into this town, profit from it, and build homes. And we only have so much of it left.
But part of these system development fees, we're putting the burden on the new home that's being built and not putting it on the existing resident.
Right.
You know, Bob, and I've heard that throughout the year. We're putting the burden of everything on the new home and not on the existing residents, but some of us got 40% and 50% tax increases this year. So, how do you reconcile that?
You say, well, we got all these new homes paying taxes, it should have gone down, right? But it doesn't, because you pay the new home comes in, pays $3,000 in taxes, and has how many kids in school or something like that,
And that's part of living in a community. I mean, those costs are community costs.
I understand, but we're allowing people to come in, we've got this much property, everybody wants to be here, good for them, I understand it, I love it here. And I've been here since I was a kid every summer, and I've watched it grow, and I understand growth is good and growth is bad. And I'm one of the old guys that said, I hate to see it grow. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. But we're allowing people to come in, build in this town, and not have an appropriate fee for the amount that it's gonna cost us all that are here later on to support that. It would be so easy if even if it was just a dollar figure, like, there's a lot of towns that have that where it's a dollar figure, and it cuts down the building, it makes it a little easier. No town has that.
No. It's not allowed by state statute. We have to follow our state statutes, otherwise we're in trouble with the state.
The road impact fee, though, has been allowed for a while,
So there are fees that we can put in like that, we could raise the cost of the road impact fee, you could raise the tax.
One impact fee the town doesn't have, which is a road impact fee, which is being contemplated for funding for next year.
So that's not even there yet.
It's not there yet. The only community around here that has a road impact fee, the only one, is St. John. And they just implemented it 2 years ago.
It's just something that it would seem easy, but I know things that seem easy aren't, so.
sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't.
Yeah, most of the time they aren't.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Broaders, 145-13 Morse. If you don't mind, I'd just like to back it up just a little bit and go back to our, to number 1 Lakeside South. There was a couple of things, I was writing it down, I was going, but it was moving pretty fast, and he made a fantastic presentation. And Greg, I do agree with you. I've driven through the developments, no doubt. Beautiful work. I'd like to see a few less homes, but the work is good, and it looks nice, you know, and that's basically, I think everybody's gotten to that point tonight to say, it's gotta look nice, right? Spend all that money and somebody drives through and feels like, what did I do? Why did I spend all this money? Look at my entrance. Well, who wants that? But there was a couple things during that presentation that and I might have missed them, guys, so please, just help me out a little bit. On the 60-foot lots, there was a total of 105. On the 70-foot lots, there was a total of 86. Well, that total adds up to 191, which leaves 359 lots, which is minus 359 lots from the 550 total. So I was wondering, what was the width of those 359 lots going to be, and are those going to be the single-family lots? Because you talked about a third-car garage. Now, I know on 70 foot, what are you going to do, stack them 1, 2, 3, front to back?
Terry, let me hold you up for a hot second here, so you got what it says on here is there's 193 80 by 135.
Okay, so say that one more time, please.
193 lots that are 80 by 135.
80 by 135. Now, these are all by 135, though, I was under the impression. Done.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we got 60, 70, and 80.
They got a 60-foot lot proposed, 60 by 135 for 191 lots.
91, so I did right.
No. 60 was 105, like you said.
Thank you.
70 is 80, there's 86.
Thank you.
80 is 193, and 90 is 166.
Oh, there are going to be 90, 156 with lots.
There's 90 by, yes, those are paired villas. But there's, it's 90 by
Yeah, the paired villas are
135.
90 by 135.
Okay.
Is this wrong? This key is wrong?
He didn't divide it out, because you can see on the maintenance grade, it says 60 and 70.
Oh, I see.
So now, so you can understand some of the confusion when it comes to density. A lot of things that are set up here, it seems great, but it seems people that actually know these things understand that it's a lot of smoke. You talked about 2.25 homes per acre, but if you talked about the lots with the villa homes and the smaller, you're going to have how many on that 156? right? And then, so if you talk about density, we want to know how many homes are going to go on the acres that are actually have homes and villas and townhomes on. See, if you eliminate the green space, the walk path, the lakes, and the retention and all of that, well, then he's probably at somewhere around, what, 5 or 6 per acre? So I'm hoping that through these questions in the workshops are so important, is these are the questions that sometimes get slipped through. It's easy to say one thing and make it sound great, but in the all reality, if we got 156 by 135, that's not even an acre. We're talking 6 units on it. So the density factor has a lot more to do with the 2.25 houses per acre on 200 acres roughly. I think it was 193 total, somewhere in there. So even at 193 at 2.25, he's at 475-ish. Now, and I'm all for green space. I'm all for the retentions. I understand. I've been in the building trade my whole life. I understand everything that's been discussed. But the problem is a lot of times regular folks just don't understand what's being done. So I think it's important that in our next workshop, maybe we get those questions asked. How many houses, when you talk about density, how many houses are in an actual acre in the development?
I asked him that question.
I did, that's why I'm following up. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you very much for that. And it was going so fast, sir. It really was, and I thank you for that. So I hope I posed a couple questions that are important to our density factor, and that seems to be one of the things that's been talked about quite a bit.
So I'd like to provide a little bit of clarity. The
Sure.
standard density calculation is the total amount of units divided by the total amount of acreage for the development.
Isn't that what I just said, though?
No.
2.25 for the 200, or 193 comes up to about 475?
The entire development is 220 acres, sir.
Okay, so I'm sorry, it's an initial 30 acres or so?
120 is 2.5.
So what is the math, actually?
2.5
2
units per acre.
Okay, but you understand that not all 220 acres are being developed as housing. There's a lot of open space which condenses the density per acre on what is actually being built, and that's a fact. That's part of the smoke that I think we should try to clear up, right? That before we say yes on something. And I'm not opposed to development at all. I'm just opposed to overdevelopment. I think when you talk about, so I've come into this room and talked about zoning and what I can do and what's available and the rules in the book, and I know for a fact that R2 is 80 foot across the frontage on the street it's on. I know R1 is 100 foot. I know the 10,000 on R2, and I know 15,000 on R1. None of this matches any of that.
It's going to be a PUD.
See, but that's the problem, sir.
No, it's not a problem.
If you have ordinances in the town, but you let every developer come in and skate underneath them, then why have the ordinances? Why tell me I can't do something? So in other words, if I come in here with a PUD and I want to do 60-foot frontages and build garages underneath a skinny little house, what are you going to say to that? I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't even do that on my land. I wouldn't do that to my neighbors.
I would say no.
Thank you, thank you. So please, when it comes down to these kind of things, understand the density is on the ground that he's building on, not the open space, the parkland, and the lakes, and of course the walk paths.
The layperson has to understand is that we have to abide by what the formulas are and the state says, or the town, and we're told that the density is figured by what Ashley just said, by the amount of acreage in the development, not the land being used.
And that's
I
fine.
had the same question.
And that's fine, sir.
But she explained that, and so that's what we have to go by.
Okay, and that's fine, but my question was, for the public, is how many houses are going on an acre when you talk about 6 units on 156 wide by 135 deep? How many rooftops are going to be on the acre if they're only 60 foot, or, I'm sorry, if they're only 70 foot wide? Or how about the 80 foot wide you have there? How many houses are going to go on an acre? I see my mom's acre was 325 by 130 something. So if that was 325, we're talking how many houses on that acre, right? So it's about density. It's about how far apart do I want to reach out my window and touch my neighbor's hand? Do I want to brush my teeth while I hear him taking a shower? Do I want to smell his exhaust fumes every time I'm sitting in my front yard or talking to my child or playing baskets in the front? It just seems that for a town that was a recreational town, always, and just can't even understand how these decisions could be made when the best part about this town is the lake. Well, if you do the same thing right up close to the lake where I'm at, I mean, what's it gonna do to the value of what the best part of this town was? Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none? Public comment is closed. Does Commissioner have any comments, anybody? Nope. We're adjourned.